agenda, which relates to the adoption of the annual report. I will open with karakia. Kia tau mai te maramatanga, kia tau mai te rangamari e, kia tau mai te kaha me te aroha mō tēnei kaupapa hui e kai ki e. We have apologies from Dan Shellcrass. Other than that, I believe everyone is either present in the room or on Zoom. Again, because mixed meetings, so I'll keep a lookout for hands up for those on the Zoom. So obviously use microphones so that people on Zoom can hear. Welcome to the auditor, Mr. Mackey, who's also on Zoom. So someone move the apology for Councillor Shellcrass. Move Councillor Mailing, seconded Councillor McKenzie. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. We have 2 people registered to speak in the public forum. I'll just call them in order that I have them on the agenda. So first we have Matthias Schaefer. Welcome, Matthias. So you have 5 minutes. I'll give you a nod at 4.5 when, if you are still speaking at that point. Over to you. Yeah, push until the little red, that's it, you're on.
Thank you. So last week in the meeting here, in the Chief Executive update, there was a section about the well-being of staff and personal safety of staff. Quote, council staff had to take steps this month to protect their identities. This includes not putting their names and emails, names on emails and having the information withheld in the council's rating database. 3 questions raised for me on this matter. 1, who is legally liable for the content of such an email or letter or document if there's no name on it? 2nd, can these kind of documents without a name used in legal proceedings? Because whenever I call the Ministry of Justice, they ask me for names of the person that are involved. And 3, is this practice in line with Section 14 of the Local Government Act, namely accountability, when there's no identity of a person that can be held accountable to? I'd like to share a bit of my experience when it comes to privacy concerns. Last year in March, I got an email from your enforcement officer. Quote, if you choose not to respond within a reasonable time frame, I will attend and conduct an inspection in your absence. I was highly concerned because how does he know about my absence or when I'm at home? So I asked if my property was under surveillance, and he replied, your property is not and never has been under surveillance. The simple observation of a structure whilst passing falls far below this threshold of surveillance. 1 year later, I got access to a TDC document in which this officer describes a bit more in detail what is meant with simple observation whilst passing. Quote, a silver station wagon was observed with the registration. My later check of the NZTA database revealed that this vehicle was registered to and the name with the physical address of being such and such. Further, he writes, moreover, this vehicle has been observed at the property since my first investigation in December 2021. Further, he writes, on April 2023, I drove past the property at around 8 a.m. I also observed the vehicle with this registration. I want to be 100% clear. Nothing, or it was not mentioned to me that there was anything wrong with this vehicle that you observed. It was registered, had a warrant of fitness, no leaks of fluid. It was not a camper van, trailer, caravan, building, dwelling, or whatever word you have in your beautiful TRMP. And to be 200% clear, this is not the vehicle that's currently questioned in legal proceedings at the Environment Court. It's another vehicle, just an ordinary Honda Odyssey station wagon, a type of car you see every day on roads. Nothing should be concerned about this car. The problem is that this was not actually my car, but it was a car of a friend who was not the owner of the property. So on top of all of this, your enforcement officer did some background checks on my friend's vehicle that was parked on my property, and the following information was collected. License plate, vehicle make, model, name of registered owner, physical address, mailing address, vehicle type, color, previous country, fuel type, last warrant of fitness, expiry date of warrant of fitness, license type, license issue date, latest odometer reading, plate type, registration status, number of seats, assembly type, CC rating, engine number, and last but not least, date of birth and gender of my friend. I fail to see any reason why you collect this data. and why I was not informed about this. I consider this kind of action a significant breach of privacy, not only my privacy, but also the privacy of my friend. So coming back to my initial point, the chief executive decided to put some measures in place to protect the privacy of staff. I'd like to get a clear understanding if this is doable within the legal framework, yes or no, and why. And further, I would like to know what can we, the public, do to protect our privacy so that we are not observed by TDC and background checks are performed on our cars. I would suggest that the next time you talk about privacy concerns within TDC, then maybe not only in relation to your staff when they act in a public room or in a public arena, but also think about members of the public when they act in their on their private property, because we also have a right to privacy. Thank you.
Thank you. And next up, we have Kristen Schaefer.
Thank you very much. Given that the annual report is being presented for adoption today, I would like to take the opportunity to comment on some matters that arose for me in that context and hope that my suggestions may be perceived to have a positive effect on what can be reported in next year's annual report. My red thread will be the term of due diligence. I will limit the term for communications in the public, namely in public meetings and therefore in documents on public record. During the last full council meeting, I wondered whether the numbers of the executive leadership team, other than the CEO and the COO, were equally office holders of the local authority. And the staff responsible for the report in which this question came up for me later commented that any staff was an officer of the local authority or council. I would like to express my concern about this, as the delegations register makes it very clear that the statutory delegation occurs when any officer of the local authority is appointed, which is not equal to a staff role. I wish for more due diligence to be applied in the future by staff when making a public statement, so that councillors who may rely on a sufficient understanding of specific terms can make a more informed decision on matters. This leads me to another suggestion in relation to due diligence. I appreciate the publication of the delegations register, but would favour council to also provide previous versions of their document on their website, as well as the current and any other versions of the appointment register, to provide more transparency and understanding of council's organisational and operational structure. I would also appreciate that final versions of important documents, such as the annual report, were provided reasonably in advance of a meeting, so that any interested party is given the fair chance to read and understand its content and may be able to positively contribute in a meeting. Another example that came up for me was the phrase, "Due to legal proceedings, I cannot make a comment." I respect council's decision not to comment on a precise matter, which is for a judge to make a decision on. However, I think it is inappropriate to suggest to full council at the same time that a member of the public may not necessarily speak the truth. I favour open engagement on a factual basis, but do strictly oppose criticism on a person's integrity without providing any evidence with it. I also strictly oppose a total disengagement with any questions of the same person when these questions are not in front of a judge. I make this suggestion to avoid any unnecessary tension and spending of money should the member of the public be otherwise forced to engage the Ombudsman. My last point relates to budgeting. In previous years, I read that the TDC did not budget for income from charges and fees due to the fact that it could be perceived as, quote, perverted. However, I recently read that less income was generated than budgeted for from charges and fees. My concern around that relates to a possible conflict of interest when deciding on whether to use compliance tools like education and support first for achieving compliance. I am worried a conflict of interest would decrease the readiness to use such methods that would not necessarily create income for TDC. This could have a negative effect on the community well-being requirement under the Local Government Act. And I urge Council to use due diligence when making decisions on how to budget. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Right, that concludes the public forum. The next item is declarations of interest. So are there any declarations of interest in relation to any item on today's agenda? If not, thank you. There are no late items and no minutes to confirm. That draws us to the purpose of today's meeting, which is the adoption of the annual report. So I'd ask Briley and other supporting staff to come forward. Briley, over to you to introduce the item.
Okay, good afternoon. So we're here today to adopt the annual report, which is to report to the community on our performance for the year ended June 2023 against the financials and levels of service set in the long-term plan 2018 and the annual plan for this year. Since the agenda came out, there have been no further changes to the versions of the annual report and the summary attached to the agenda, but the summary's audit has not yet been completed, so we've changed the resolutions to approve the summary and note that that audit will be included in the published version. The Audit and Risk Committee reviewed a draft of the annual report in September and recommended its adoption subject to audit clearance, and Councillor Mackenzie will talk to that process. We've also changed slightly the order of resolutions, and our Audit Director, John Mackey, will attend and needs to cover off a few questions as well for councillors, which were circulated from the Audit and Risk Committee last week. There's a few documents we're tabling. So there's a representation letter. That there was an error in one of the appendices that's been corrected, so the latest version did get uploaded. We've also got a letter of representation assurance signed by ELT, and there's also the unmodified audit opinion that's yet to be signed. Other than that, unless you want to say anything, we'll take questions.
Okay, thanks, Briley. I'll come to questions. I'll come to Councillor Mackenzie to speak on behalf of the Audit and Risk Committee in the absence of the two independent members, both the Chair, Graham Naylor and Graham McGlynn. And then I'll come to John Mackey to make any comment statements and ask the questions that have been alluded to by Briley. Just before doing so, I think it's important to note that this is the end of a significant amount of work council staff have gone through to prepare the annual report in conjunction with and working alongside Audit New Zealand to furnish them with the information in order for them to arrive at the position that they have in terms of their processes. It's crucially important. Today is the last day statutorily for us to adopt the annual report. So it's important that we go through the process, that John Mackey, on behalf of Audit New Zealand, is satisfied with the answers that he receives to the question that he asked, and that we collectively are satisfied with the information that we've been provided, and that the staff and Audit New Zealand have gone through and addressed all the issues that they need to enable us to approve and adopt in confidence the annual report. So with that introduction, I will come over to Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you very much, through the Chair. So yes, the Audit and Risk Committee had seen a draft of the annual report, and that Audit and Risk Committee recommended that the Council adopt the annual report subject to remaining audit matters being resolved satisfactorily. And so they appointed a little subcommittee group, as the Mayor has said, of myself and Graham McGlynn and Graham Naylor to work through those. I can report that we did have a meeting last week, and that all three of us were very comfortable with the resolution of the outstanding audit matters. I do perhaps want to take this opportunity to make the point that this is actually a really important document. I mean, this represents the expression of the performance of the council in delivering on the annual plan that we set for them. And so, you know, it really is a document that you can all be proud of. I do want to pass on my thanks to the team who have been working really hard to get this over the line. Briley, Charlotte, I guess, Matt, Mike, many others who have contributed. So, you know, I understand what it's like to go through this, and so many thanks to you. And also, you know, I can tell you now that not all councils will meet the statutory deadline to get their annual report approved by the 31st of October. So I hope we do that today. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Before I come to John Mackey, are there any questions anyone has of council staff on any of the information that we've received in relation to the meeting? If not, I'll come across to John Mackey from Audit New Zealand. Welcome, John.
Well, thank you. So I'd like to thank the team at Tasman for their cooperation and help during the audit. It's been a challenging year, as you all well know, not making it easy for the audit to for the preparation of financial statements and the audit. And we were in a transition year that we were moving from having your statutory deadline 31 December. It's now back to 31 October. So as I see it, it's a major achievement by everybody involved so that we're in the point we are today. Right, so what I'm proposing to do, if the council authorises the mayor and the chief executive to sign the letter of representation and adopts the annual report, to issue an unmodified opinion. That's a clear opinion, but there will be an emphasis of matter in the audit report. Now, that's no criticism of the council. What the emphasis of matter will be is referring to the note in the financial statements about the uncertainty of the three waters, the affordable waters reform. So that is based on what the legal position is, and what actually turns out we don't know at this stage. So, so that's what will happen if things proceed as we all hope. So as part of the explaining to you what, if you authorise the mayor and the chief executive to sign the letter of rep, there's a few representations in there that I just want to clarify on. Laws and regulations, we don't do a comprehensive legislative compliance audit. What we do is look at whether you met the key legislation about accountability. So that's reporting that the annual report complies with the Local Government Act and the accounting standards, that you're reporting back against the annual plan and long-term plan is accurate. So that's where our focus is. But under the auditing standards, are also required to ask the governors whether they are aware of any significant non-compliance with legislation or regulations that could significantly affect the operations of the council. So that's my first question, whether the elected members are aware of any significant, aware of breach of any significant legislation or regulations that could significantly impact the council.
Okay, thank you, John. So everyone can hear what the question is, and I'll take the fact that there is no hands raised in the room or on Zoom, that no one is aware of anything that would meet that criteria. Thank you. Back to you, John.
Related parties, we have a challenge with being able to conclude on the completeness of related party interests, because we don't know your personal circumstances, and so we also don't know what interests you have through trusts or partnerships. So we're reliant to a significant degree on the disclosures that you make. So on that basis is that you don't necessarily know what your fellow councillors' interests are, but in terms of your own interests, you're comfortable that they're appropriately disclosed in the related parties' disclosures in the annual report.
So again, so everyone clear what the question is? You all, or are we all satisfied that our any conflicts related parties are adequately disclosed? I will take the nods around the table and the lack of anyone leaping forth on the Zoom to state otherwise, that yes, that is also satisfied. Thank you.
So post-balance date events, there's three types of events. There's business as usual, there's events that affect that require the financial statements to be adjusted. For example, if a major debtor went into receivership, you would normally reduce down the debt that the income you're expecting to get. But you also have events that require disclosure because they're significant to the readers of the financial statements. So we talked earlier about the three waters reforms, and the other one that we will be disclosed is the CEO's intention to resign, will not seek reappointment, but the elected members aware of any other events after balance date that should be disclosed or adjusted?
Thank you. So again, everyone clear what the question is? No one in the room is aware of anything that meets the criteria. No one on Zoom is indicating either. Back to you. Thank you, John.
The last questions relate to fraud. Are you aware of any actual or suspected fraud?
Again, no indications in the room, and neither any indications on Zoom. So the answer to that is no.
Are you satisfied that the control environment's appropriate to minimise the risk that the financial statements can be misstated as a result of fraud, materially misstated as a result of fraud?
So in the absence of commentary or indication to the contrary, I will take it that we are satisfied collectively that the control environment is appropriate.
Okay. Now, have the elected members seen the key audit issues update or not? Okay, that was just that they have.
Yes.
So, okay, so I'm just save people's time. Is that if there's any questions on those items, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you, John. Mark, Councillor Greening.
Just for clarity, are they the documents that were tabled this morning by Robin?
So the key audit issues update was in the letter from the Audit and Risk Committee circulated last week.
Appendix 1.
Appendix 1 to that letter.
So these are not the two documents that were uploaded this morning, the unmodified audit opinion and the Mayor and CEO representation letter?
No, not contained in those.
Okay, because they're the two I haven't viewed because I haven't had time to, it's sufficient time to read them, given they were uploaded this morning.
Okay, thank you. No further questions of the auditor. I'll just check, John, for completeness that you are satisfied that the information you received, the cooperation of council staff and the preparation of your opinion was what you would expect it to be. I think you did comment in terms of the time frame changing that you were, but just double checking that you are happy with the information and the support you've received from council.
Yes, I'm happy that we've got the information that we need. We're happy with cooperation from staff, so that I'm happy to recommend that you do adopt the annual report.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor Brian.
Thank you, Mayor. Tim, just a question around, John talked about the qualification around the free waters. Just wondering if that applies to every council in the country, or is it tailored to each individual council?
So the emphasis of matter paragraph, it's not a qualification, it is for all the territorial authorities and unitary authorities and the Auckland Waters, etc. of this world. They will have the same emphasis of matter paragraph in their audit report.
Right. Yeah, sorry, my misunderstanding, but thank you for the answer. That's what I was getting at there. So everyone's got the same issue effectively.
Yes.
And while I'm speaking, if I may, Tim, I'd just like to thank staff and particularly the leadership team and those on the coalface for the work they've done, particularly while we're also running alongside the long-term plan process. So our appreciation to all the people involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Brian. Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you very much through the chair. Look, I'm happy to move the resolutions. And, you know, I think I say this every year in terms of the annual report. It's very difficult for the public at large to understand what a surplus is. They immediately think that that's spare money. And so I think that, you know, we really do need to think about how we phrase that, how we explain the terms revaluations and non-cash vested, you know, asset income. These are technical accounting matters that drive that surplus. So we just encourage us to think carefully about how we communicate that. But I'm happy to move the resolution, and thanks to Audit New Zealand. Thank you.
Thank you. So it's moved. Councillor McKenzie, is there a seconded? Councillor Nailing. Any further comments or questions? Councillor Greening.
Just one, John. It's just in relation to the declaration about fraud and unethical behaviour. If someone on staff or a councillor who's uncomfortable making declarations in public like this, want to just sound out or ask questions around certain activities, who should they contact at your office?
Depends on the nature of what you want to discuss, probably myself in the first instance.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. With that, and just, Councillor Hill, welcome.
Kia ora, thank you. Through you, Chair. Look, just want to acknowledge to all the effort that's gone into this. I don't know how many people out in Tasman District want to read it and know it and understand it, but I think the ways that I'd like us to be able to, you know, make this available in ways that are easiest for people to access them. So I imagine we probably will have a post or a media release or something. But I think if we can have separate links to the summary report, I think it's less for people to wade through. But in terms of transparency and where the money's gone and been spent and gathered from and what we've been doing and what we've achieved and what we haven't quite, it's a very, very good account. And I appreciate particularly how accessible it is in terms of being able to read it, the way it's presented, the language that's used. I think it's pretty good to get through, and particularly the summary, I think, for people who would like to see that snapshot. And I brought this up at Environment and Reg Committee meeting around the reports that we receive there that would be of quite a bit of interest to some people, and the way that we have our reports just as agenda reports, you can always provide a link. You know, there can be a link to the meeting agenda report with all the reports in. But I'd like us to consider how we make reports available to people to be able to access really, really easily. Yeah, so certainly we'll be supporting this, and I appreciate all the efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. Just before I put the resolution, I'd just like to re-emphasise the points that were made by Councillor Hill earlier, by Deputy Mayor Bryant and Councillor Mackenzie, thanking everyone who's been involved. The degree to which the whole council is involved in this is obviously significantly less than our role in the other major documents like the 10-year plan or the annual plan. But as Councillor Mackenzie mentioned, it is a crucially important document for people to be able to check, you know, both the financial situation of the council and how that has been achieved or not achieved according to the last year's results, but also some of those non-financial service levels that we're required to report back on. I think it's mentioned somewhere in here, there's 109 different areas that are considered, and a large percentage of those were met in their entirety, and then another percentage met to a lesser degree. But it's important that people can see what was met, and important that people can see what wasn't as well. So to the team, acknowledging the role that Audit New Zealand play, especially in meeting the time frame, but to our staff, particularly all the hard work that goes in, the shift of balance date from December back to October, as was mentioned earlier, doubling that up with the work that's undergoing in relation to the development of the 10-year plan. There's a huge amount of work in this space, so to the whole team, my congratulations, and on behalf of the council, thank you for all your hard work. With that, I'll put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Resolution is carried. Thank you. That draws us to the conclusion of the meeting. I will just close with karakia. Kia hora te marino, kia whakapapa panamu te moana, aroha atu, aroha mai, tēnā tātou, tēnā tātou, tēnā tātou katoa. Thank you all.